Get started.
This council meeting to order on the 6th of April. Please join me in a moment of silence. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance, and we have a flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with justice for all.
Liberty and justice.
Liberty and justice for all.
Yeah, that
Okay.
was fun.
Ms. Domingo, would you call the roll, please?
Councilmember Clark.
Here.
Reed.
Here.
Beth.
Here.
If you said Lawler, I'm here.
Tyson. Williamson.
Here.
And Mayor Atkinson.
Here. Okay. So
Your phone is muting in and out really bad.
okay.
Or
So,
computer,
first
whichever
is
one you're
approval
on.
of the agenda, and we have we have no changes to the agenda unless somebody else has something they wish to change. Okay, all those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
So first on the agenda is proclamation in honor of Professional Municipal Clerks Week, the 3rd of May through the 9th. And I'll ask Mr. McCleary, our city manager.
Your Honor, thank you very much. The mayor issued the following proclamation for the 51st Annual Professional Municipal Clerks Week, May 3rd through May 9th, 2020. Whereas the office of the professional municipal clerk, a time-honored and vital part of local government, exists throughout the world. And whereas the office of the professional municipal clerk is the oldest among public servants. And whereas the office of the professional municipal clerk provides the professional link between the citizens, the local governing bodies, and agencies of government at other levels. And whereas professional municipal clerks have pledged to be ever mindful of their neutrality and impartiality, rendering equal service to all. Whereas the professional municipal clerk serves as the information center on functions of local government and community. Whereas professional municipal clerks continually strive to improve the administration of the affairs of the office of the professional municipal clerk through participation in education programs, seminars, workshops, and the annual meetings of their state, provincial, county, and international professional organizations. Whereas it is most appropriate that we recognize the accomplishments of the office of the professional municipal clerk. Now, therefore, Dave Atchison, Mayor of the City of Albion, recognizes the week of May 3rd through May 9th, 2020 as Professional Municipal Clerks Week, and further extends appreciation to our professional municipal clerk, Jill Domingo, and to all professional municipal clerks for the vital services they perform and their exemplary dedication to the communities they represent.
Thank you. And next up, a proclamation thanking our essential city workers for sustaining critical services during the COVID-19 pandemic emergency. Whereas the world is dealing with a pandemic disease infecting 1.2 million people throughout the world, over 300,000 in the United States, nearly 16,000 in Michigan, including numerous cases here in eastern Calhoun County. And whereas by Executive Order 2020-21, Governor Whitmer directed a suspension of all non-critical functions and ordered all non-essential personnel to stay home, stay safe to minimize the risk of infection and loss of life from COVID-19 virus. And whereas essential employees unable to stay home, stay safe, serve selflessly with an elevated risk to themselves and their families. And whereas City of Albion essential employees, including public safety officers and public services personnel, continue to faithfully remain fully engaged, executing each duty and responsibility assigned without complaint to sustain all critical services for our community. And whereas our community relies on these courageous individuals daily, we are truly indebted to their unwavering public service. We are indeed fortunate and grateful for their honorable service. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the members of this city council declare our essential city employees our local heroes in the city of Albion, Michigan. In witness whereof, I have hereunto set my hand and caused this to be affixed the official seal of Albion, Michigan on this 6th day of April in the year 2020. Next is a proclamation thanking the Food Hub and community volunteers for supporting our seniors. Whereas the state of Michigan is dealing with the pandemic coronavirus, COVID-19, a respiratory disease that can result in serious illness or death, particularly in older adults and those with chronic health conditions. And whereas since the 6th of March 2020, the U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention has been encouraging seniors to stay at home as much as possible. And whereas by Executive Order 2020-21, Governor Whitmer directed Michigan residents to remain at home or in their places of residence to the maximum extent feasible. And whereas Albion seniors have overwhelmingly complied to help reduce the risk of spreading COVID-19 within our community. And whereas those seniors remaining at home have needed community support and assistance during this pandemic, especially regular supplemental food supplies of food. And whereas the outpouring of community support during times of need such as these reflect the strength and noble character of Albion. And whereas the weekly senior food distributions to seniors organized by Laura Overholt, Director of the Albion Food Hub, Pastor Leslie Fritz of the First United Methodist Church of Albion, and Councilwoman Lynn Reed have provided more than 500 meals to Albion and Homer seniors so far. And whereas compassionate and caring community volunteers, including Carol Smith, Felicia Coates, Sylvia Benvitas, Sam Porter, Elijah Armstrong, Vivian Davis, and Linda Lanou tire selflessly each week, assign alongside Laura Overholt and Pastor Fritz to load hundreds of food boxes into vehicles for distribution to our seniors in need. And whereas Albion's Ministerial Association and area churches have risen to the challenge of identifying seniors in need and facilitating the weekly distribution of food to them. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the members of this city council commend and express our gratitude for these shining role models of compassion and selfless community spirit. We have a proclamation thanking the Calhoun County Senior Millage Association Committee, the Albion Homer United Way, Albion Community Foundation, and the Battle Creek YMCA for generously supporting our community needs during COVID-19 pandemic. Whereas on January 31st, 2020, the United States Department of Health and Human Services Secretary Alex Azar declared a public health emergency, and 11 March 2020 by Executive Order 2024, Governor Whitmer declared a state of emergency for COVID-19. And whereas the suspension of all non-essential organizational functions required closures of all schools and most businesses, the substantial curtailment of those businesses remaining open in a modified operating status, and the mandate for all non-essential personnel to stay home ordered by Governor Whitmer in Executive Order 2020-21 has disrupted the lives of every member of our community and placed financial strain on those now out of work, especially those at the lower end of the economic spectrum. And whereas rapidly evolving community needs during this COVID-19 emergency demand resources be quickly made available with the highest degree of flexibility and inter-organizational cooperation. And whereas local charitable organizations, including the Calhoun County Senior Millage Association Committee, Albion Homer United Way, Albion Community Foundation, and the Battle Creek YMCA responded immediately through cooperation and collaboration to provide critical resources needed by the Albion Homer communities, such as temporary child care for essential personnel, supplemental food supplies, and other necessary resources. And whereas the resourcefulness, compassion, and cooperation demonstrated by the leadership of these organizations reflect the highest standards of public service. Now, therefore, the members of this city council declare our gratitude and highest compliments to Helen Guzzo, Jill Hind, Tim Kraus, Marcia Starkey, and Shane Williamson for their leadership, determination, and compassion. Proclamation the Marshall and Homer Public School System superintendents, administrators, faculty, and staff for supporting our students and their families during the COVID-19 pandemic emergency. Whereas on March 13th, 2020, Governor Whitmer ordered the closure of all K through 12 schools across the state of Michigan as a necessary step to protect our children, our families, and our overall public health from the coronavirus pandemic. And whereas during this period of school closure, Marshall and Homer Public School Systems immediately recognized the importance of ensuring our children's access to food was not disrupted. To their credit, the administrators, faculty, and support staff within both school districts rose to the challenge and rapidly implemented free breakfast lunch distribution programs. And whereas the quick and compassionate response of these good people was a great comfort to all members of the Albion Homer communities who recognize a significant number of children rely on the public school system for meals. And whereas the challenge of distant learning is compounded in families of modest means and limited access to computers and internet within their homes who would otherwise utilize these resources at community libraries or other locations normally open to the public. And whereas the administrators, teachers, and support staff have focused on finding solutions to mitigate these technology challenges, and whereas the school system have continued to be an essential community partner in our students' education during this extended period of social distancing and stay home, stay safe. And whereas our community depends upon these dedicated professionals and their steadfast commitment to our community. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the members of this city council declare our thanks and appreciation for the leadership and ingenuity which focuses on solutions during this trying time. And this is the last proclamation, thanking all medical professionals and healthcare workers in Calhoun County for putting our friends and families first during this COVID pandemic. Whereas the world is dealing with the pandemic disease infecting 1.2 million people throughout the world, over 300,000 in the United States, nearly 16,000 in Michigan, including over 40 cases here in Calhoun County. And whereas by Executive Order 2020-21, Governor Whitmer directed a suspension of all non-critical function and ordered all non-essential personnel to stay home, stay safe, to minimize the risk of infection and loss of life to themselves, their families, and the general public from COVID-19 virus. And whereas medical professionals and healthcare workers unable to stay home, stay safe, continue to serve selflessly with an elevated risk to themselves and their families, faithfully remaining on the front lines battling COVID-19 firsthand. And whereas these public servants are being stretched to extremes most of us have never experienced, on the front lines treating the sick, in other roles translating pandemic information for the public, answering public questions from friends, family, and coworkers, and juggling professional duties with personal fears and responsibilities. And whereas all of us relies on these courageous individuals to protect us all from the COVID-19 pandemic. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the members of this city council declare these critical members of Calhoun County are local heroes in the city of Albion, Michigan. We are truly indebted to their unwavering public service and are indeed fortunate and grateful for their honorable service. In witness whereof, I have hereunto set my hand and caused to be affixed the official seal of Albion, Michigan on this 6th day of April in the year 2020. And unless there is an objection from any member of council, I would request that all 6 of those proclamations be posted on the city's website for a reasonable period of time. Okay. Next, we have no public hearings, so we'll go into public comments. And as a reminder, we have 3 minutes. This is going to be a little bit difficult. We'll work through that. With the conduct of the speakers, people are reminded that when you're addressing city council, make responsible comments, refrain from making personal, disrespectful, slanderous, or profane remarks. If people do not promptly obey the rulings of the chair to call to order, they may be removed from this meeting. Personal comments about or attacks on members of the public, city council, or city employees are prohibited. So do we have public comments this evening?
Currently, there's one person with their hand up. Anybody who's listening, if you'd like to make a public comment, in the top right-hand corner of your screen, you should see a red box with a white arrow, and 2 circles below that is a hand. Click on that hand if you'd like to make a public comment. Garrett Brown, go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, you can hear me now. Okay. So I'm assuming this is agenda item. So I just wanted to comment on agenda items A, L, and M. Regarding A, the concern I have is the city currently has an ordinance that deals with the employment contracts between the manager and non-unionized department heads. And the council should not be weakening what I believe are really anti-corruption, anti-sweetheart deal protections in that ordinance. So currently, council approves the union contracts and it approves the contract with the manager. But the one type of contract which is subject to abuse is the contracts between the manager and department heads. And so I think to scrap the requirement for council being notified really in the future will put future councils in a position where a manager can reward a department head for political allegiance to them, and the council would not be aware of that, whether that means extending contracts out to 10 years or giving exorbitant severance packages. And that's actually what happened in 2018, right before former city manager Mitchell left.
Mr. Brown, do not make personal comments about members of the public.
Okay, well, a former city manager extended the contracts of department heads, and the council was not notified in accordance with the current ordinance. So to remove the notification actually weakens something that would actually need to be strengthened. And then finally, items L and M, I both see those as kind of political attacks. At the last meeting, myself and the former Councilmember Brown mentioned allegations of charter violations from several council members. And so whether there was violations of the Open Meetings Act, violations of Michigan's election law, violations of the charter, and so if those are not included for prosecution, it's really a hypocritical vote to only single out former Councilmember Brown. And finally, Councilmember Lawler has been a poll worker for several election cycles. And so I think item M really is inappropriate to target Councilmember Lawler because if the state does not ban her from serving as a poll worker, I don't think the city should do that because no poll worker is absolutely free of bias. Poll workers make political contributions. They put up yard signs, and if they can serve as poll workers, I don't see why this is targeting Councilmember Lawler by trying to put this as a code of ethics issue. And I know there were rumors regarding the 2018 election and the loss in precinct 1 by the former
council. Mr. Brown, your time has expired. Are there further public comments?
I do not see any other public comments. Wait, okay. Yes, there are. Hang on. Ms. Brown, if you unmute yours, you should be able to speak.
Oh, I'm sorry. Hi, yep. Sonia Brown, 713 Orchard Drive. I just wanted to kind of echo the comment that was made before me regarding those 3 agenda items. I think former Mayor Brown did a great job of speaking to those. And again, I just kind of want to reiterate that I'm not aware of any state law that prohibits an elected official from working at the polls. So it doesn't make sense. I also want to just kind of urge council to consider the recommendation of the investigator in the investigation. And that recommendation was that the state police.
Is not on the agenda, Ms. Brown. Do not refer to things that are.
So can you add some more time for me in case I, don't get all my point out?
No, we will not have more time. Please do not refer to items that are not on the agenda during this comment section.
So as part of the special prosecution, which is an agenda item, I would hope that you all would move forward in a positive manner and at some time address when citizens are making comments and they're rudely interrupted. the 3-minute time frame, maybe that needs to be looked at. And if there's a policy that you all feel like you need to put in place, put that in place and not leave it to the discretion of one person at the drop of the moment when there's something said that he doesn't approve of. Thank you.
Are there any further public comments this evening on the agenda items? You see any other people with their hand up, Chief?
No, I do not. And if
Okay.
anybody is having trouble with the hand up, you can also send a message through the questions to me as well. But I see no more.
So we'll move into the consent calendar, which is approval of the special session minutes, March 7th, approval study session minutes, March 12th, approval of regular session minutes, March 16th, and approval of study session minutes, April 3rd. May I have a motion?
Support.
All those in favor say, well, let's do it this way. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, so they are approved. Next item for individual discussion. Request approval of the second reading and adoption of ordinance 2020-03 and ordinance to amend Chapter 2, Article 2, Division 1 to amend sections 227 employment agreements. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Is there support?
Support.
Okay, it's been moved and supported. Discussion.
I have a question.
Councilman. Councilmember Williams.
Okay. So I was wondering what prompted this particular ordinance. Is this something recommended by the attorney, the city manager? I just didn't know where this came from.
Mr. McCleary?
Councilor, Mayor, if I could respond to that.
Yeah, please.
Councilor, I recommended to the city attorney that we amend the ordinance. We realized that an employment agreement template as required by the ordinance was never actually approved by the city council. And I realized this as I was working on employment agreements for several non-union positions. I had requested the employment agreement template because it was referenced in the ordinance that one had been approved by council. And after talking with the city attorney and other staff, nobody could identify that a template had ever actually been approved. The ordinance currently requires the template to be approved by ordinance, which doesn't really make sense. So I asked that the city attorney simply amend the ordinance to require that the template be approved by resolution to make it easier for the council to make changes to the template as we wish to do so. So I was the one who initiated this request.
And if I can follow up with the manager or the manager's comments.
Please, go ahead, Colin.
So yeah, this was an issue that actually came up with the previous manager, and it was actually realized at that time that although we've been working from essentially a template at least since I've been the city attorney, that no one, I conferred with the clerk and we weren't able to find any actual template that had been approved by the city. So I had actually brought this to the former manager to bring forth to the council. She declined to do so. So now that Mr. McCleary brought it up again. So there's actually two changes that were made to the ordinance. One was referenced by the manager that says that instead of modifying if the template itself is going to be modified, that has to be done by resolution as opposed to ordinance, which I think makes sense. The other provision that was in there is a provision that basically says anytime the manager wants to vary the terms, that they have to consult with council. Well, the reason that we took that out and that it's just consultation with the attorney is that the manager as the chief executive officer of the city, is free to set essentially whatever terms he wants, as long as it's within the template in terms of setting salary and those things. Those are things that realistically, under our charter, he shouldn't be consulting with the council about. Now, if he were to, for example, give a department head a $100,000 raise, that would obviously be something that the council would address directly with him, but he's free to set whatever terms within the template that he wants. That's why we modified that.
So if there's no template for him to go by, what template are you comparing it to?
We have prepared a template that'll be approved at a subsequent meeting. I have prepared a template that I've had that I indicated that I prepared actually last year, or excuse me, 2 years ago, I believe, that will be brought forth to council for approval by resolution. But it's essentially the same contract that all the previous managers, back to Mike Herman, have been using for the employment agreements with the department heads. It's just no one could actually find the actual form that was approved by previous councils.
I don't think we should move on anything until I don't know what this template should have been, or how it should have been worded, and I'm not comfortable moving on approving something that should be referenced to a template that I don't know anything about.
You're not approving the template tonight. You're just approving the ability.
I understand that, but I'm saying I would want to see it before I move on it.
But you understand that this is the second reading.
Yeah.
Councilwoman Lawler, I can't see you. Do you have comments?
I just was wondering, so if we approve, you said, Cullen, you said we are approving the template that we never saw. Are you saying that?
No, the template would be brought forth at a future meeting that would be approved by council as resolution. This just changes how the approval occurs. The previous ordinance said that it had to be approved by an ordinance, which doesn't make sense because that's kind of a large hurdle to go through to modify contractual terms. A resolution makes more sense. The other part that I referenced is that the city manager, it frees the city manager up to make modifications of the terms of the agreement, not the form of the agreement, but the terms of the agreement. But yes, the short answer, the template is going to be approved at a future meeting.
I think I agree with Council Member Clark.
The remaining council members, do you have comments? Councilman Williamson.
Hey, I wanted to chime in because this is the second reading. You know, this is something we've already looked at once and passed it forward. This is about I don't want to approve a template I haven't seen either, and the reason I'm voting yes on this is because that's not what we're doing. We're approving a process. We're actually making a process easier by putting it to resolution than putting it through ordinance and having to do 2 readings and wait 30 days or whatever the rules are there. And then the other piece is requiring a template. So again, we're not approving the template. The template will be brought back to us at the next meeting where we can critique it, change it, make amendments. We're just approving. Essentially, we're approving a process tonight. I think technology is going to kill us over the next 30 days and make it hard for us to communicate. It's so much better to do that in person. So I just want to add some softness to it. But I don't think that there's anything suspicious about this. It's just about a process, making it easier, and then requiring a template to be made.
Okay. Any other council members have comments? Councilman Reed?
I agree with what Shane said, like he said, yeah.
Okay. Councilman Smith?
No comment.
Okay. Councilwoman Lawler?
I think I'm done with my comments, Mayor. Hello? Hello? Oh, I said I think I'm finished with my comments.
Councilwoman Clark?
So I'm still I understand that he's just changing the process, but again, how there's if there's nothing to hold accountability to something of what is being changed, how would council know that it was being changed? If it's something that he can just do without any guidelines or resolutions or whatever it needs to be, how would we know that he's within his parameter if there's nothing for you to measure it by?
If this,
Mayor, if
if
I
this
may?
gets approved, it will be a resolution by which it is approved by council. If this is not approved, it will remain an ordinance, which is more time consuming and burdensome, et cetera. Whether there's oversight or not, it's just, this is just to make it a resolution as opposed to an ordinance.
Mayor, this is the city attorney. If I can offer another additional comment.
Please.
So, and just so that council is clear, it's not that there's no oversight. If the manager wanted to deviate from the template that the council would approve at a future meeting, which I want to point out, the ordinance already references a template. So it's not like we're inserting the template. I mean, a template has been created. That still would have to be approved. But if he wanted to deviate from the template, he would have to come to council and get approval by resolution to make those deviations. As far as the terms of the agreement, the manager is already empowered by charter to set the terms of employment agreements. The additional oversight that he has is that he needs to consult with me, and I already review all the contracts for the department heads before he can vary those terms. So I'm his oversight. The problem with having it reference that council oversight, having oversight over varying the terms of the agreement, starts to interfere with the manager's role as the chief administrative officer of the city. The council doesn't set the terms for the employees of the city, the manager does. And the additional oversight, aside from me, is if the council doesn't like the terms that the manager's sitting for employment agreements, they can address that with the manager and say, we're not going to renew your contract.
Any further
But
questions?
wouldn't it already be in place? You just said that it would be an interference. So if he already decided to do that, wouldn't it already be in place? Wouldn't it already be resolved and signed and moving forward?
So to play out a hypothetical, if you're saying that, so let's just say the manager decided to give, I don't know, the finance director $100,000 raise. Obviously, that would be a gross abuse of his power. And that is something that would, first of all, it would have to make it past me, which is not going to happen. But let's just say that it did. Then you've got this contract, which, you know, yeah, but your recourse is you then deal with the manager. The manager deals with the employees, the council deals with the manager. That is something that would be the case regardless of any changes that you make tonight.
So I have a question, Mayor.
Go ahead, Councilwoman Lawler.
Colin, did you know all this before? And I'm not being mean to anybody, but did you know all this before the contracts was made? Because I think we should have. Did you know that we were supposed to be notified?
The way that the ordinance currently reads is if the manager basically is varying the terms of the agreement after consultation with the attorney and the council. So what was referenced by people that were making public comment is really a distortion of the truth. The former manager gave pre-planned raises to department heads before she resigned.
Yes.
I had this discussion with the former mayor and with the former manager. This discussion was also had with our former labor attorney, who concurred that the terms of the employment agreements for the department heads were appropriately modified. So it wasn't that the council didn't get notice. There was nothing to give notice of. There were standard raises that were given and small modifications to the contract that were, you know, negotiations between employee and employer. So, you know, the information that was provided in terms of comment and it was not entirely accurate.
So you saying that we didn't need to be notified, but now you're saying we need to be notified?
No, that is not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is,
I'm sorry, Cullen. I don't mean to make you
It's,
frustrated.
no, you're not getting me frustrated. And it's, again, it's kind of like what Councilmember Williamson said, when we're not in person, it's more difficult to perceive things. What I'm saying is, if the manager wanted to modify the template that we're going to bring forth to council, if he wanted to modify that, he would have to come to council for approval. If he wants to change the salary, if he wants to change the number of PTO days, if he wants to change other things like that, he has to consult with me before he does it, so that he gets my stamp of approval.
Okay. So you don't have to come to council. I'm sorry. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you. No, he doesn't. He doesn't have to come to council to change somebody's salary or change their PTO, because those are things that under the charter, the manager makes those agreements with the employees. The council doesn't have and shouldn't have a hand in that.
Okay.
So I guess my
Okay.
question is, when I first came on, I remember hearing the ruffling and the muttering behind the scenes about what Rufus had done and who she gave raises to and things like that. And you're saying they were within the parameter, but who's to say that that wasn't just one of those buddy system things? Well, if I do this for you, you do, you do this for me later. I mean,
No, I wasn't referring to the raises. I wasn't referring.
I remember the muffling when I first came on the council about that. I heard it from several different people.
Yeah, I understand. I wasn't referring to the raises with Ms. Rufus. I was referring to the raises with Ms. Mitchell. The raises with Ms. Rufus, I can't speak to, because a lot of that was done with our former labor council.
But it was done.
I stand where my decision is still as it was before.
Okay. Do any council members have new points of objections or any further questions for clarification? Hearing none. Ms. Domingo, please call the roll.
Councilmember Clark,
No.
Reed,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
Lawler,
No.
Williamson,
Yes.
and Mayor Atchison.
Yes. Okay, approved. Next is request approval of letter of understanding with the Albion Command Officers Association for pension contributions. The letter is in our package as a read ahead. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Support?
What?
Okay. Discussion? And City Manager McClure, do you want to give us a brief overview of this?
Your Honor, real quick, back when the union contract was negotiated with the command officers, it included this provision that the city would start to make contributions to the pension system, and it stepped it up a 0.5% in the first year of the contract, and then stepping it up to a 1% and reducing the employee contributions by a like amount each year. As the finance director found out, that created a whole lot of problems because all of the parameters around that pension issue were not negotiated and worked out. So it created a number of issues. And so after sitting down with the union, I and our finance director worked out an arrangement with the union where the city would simply increase the salaries of the wages of the command officers by the same amount, but we would stay with the previous union language that requires the employees to make the 4% contributions to the pension system. So this makes it a lot cleaner, a lot easier to manage, and avoids a lot of the problems, actuarial and other problems that we have with the language as it was originally negotiated.
We're going to have to pause for a second. The mayor's computer went offline.
The mayor has messaged me and said that his computer has crashed. I'm waiting for a response to see what he wants us to do here. Let's give him a minute to try to get back on.
I think when this is all over, I'm gonna get me a picnic basket, some balls, and some hula hoops. And I'm going to the park. I'm just gonna get out from under all of this stress and just hula hoop and eat bologna sandwiches.
Can you add like 2 other people to go hula hoop with you to work out the stress level?
As long
Yes.
as it's 6 feet away.
I am calling you.
You know, it'll be a quorum then, so you can only have 2 more people with you.
Well, okay. Well, whoever wants to come, just come. But I tell you,
Well, when we going?
well, we got to wait until they cut all the things off the stuff at the park. We can't even go to the park and have fun now. After this mess cools
That's
down,
not mandatory. That's not essential.
so what?
Glenn, you can go to the park. You just can't play on the equipment.
Just it though. That's where the fun is. Go to Highland Park and get on that tsunami and just go around and around and jump off and.
Yeah, I think it's best that you not be touching the equipment during this public health emergency.
Yeah, you're right. And then after this is over, I have to go out there and scrub it all down. Oh, my caller. Now that's when I can call and invite you to come go.
Oh, mayor's back.
He's back.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yep.
Go for it.
Okay, my apologies, it just suddenly crashed on me. So, I think I went to item C, but we skipped over item B. So I'll go back to item B.
Why
Discussion
don't we
approval.
finish item C since we'd already started into it, so Emily.
Mine crashed right after, so I don't know. Go ahead.
I was saying we'd already gotten heavily into item C, so let's continue with that and we'll come back to B.
Okay. Go ahead, Mr. McCleary, I'm sorry.
Yeah, Your Honor, just to recap, I don't know at what point we lost you, but this simply corrects an issue in the union contract where if we tried to implement the provisions of the contract as they were negotiated, it would create a lot of problems for us to try to comply with those terms and make the contributions that we would need to make. It would create income tax problems. It would create income tax problems and a lot of other issues for us. So we cleaned up the language. We increased we're proposing to increase the employees' salaries by a like amount and have them continue to contribute the same percentage that they were previously contributing. So the cost to the city is the same, but now we'll go back to the old language that the employees continue to contribute the 4% into their pension.
Okay. Any questions by council?
Yes, sir.
Yes, I have one.
Okay, Councilman Williamson, you were first. I apologize, I did it again. Councilman Smith.
We're not even sitting next to each other. I know we're twins, but Mr. McCleary, I just wanted to be sure that after reading through this, I just want to verify. I saw something in there that looked like it said that we would be contributing 0.5% of each member's pay retro back to January 1st of 1919 for the full year, and then 1% retro back to January 1, 2020 to present. Is that correct?
That is correct.
That's a large chunk of money.
It's not as large of a percentage or a large dollar amount as you may think it is. I think we're looking at like 5 employees.
Mm-hmm.
And it's, a 0.5% for 2019, another 0.5%, so a total of 1% for January 1st to the present, and then moving forward. These monies were already budgeted. It's just that instead of making those contributions into the pension system, we're paying the employees through their wages.
Understood. Thank you. I yield.
Councilwoman Lawler.
When it says command, hold on, give me a minute. Albion command officers, are we talking about the police officers? Is that what we're talking about?
No, we're talking about the command officers, the sergeants, lieutenants, all of our command staff.
Okay, got you.
Any other
Thank
questions
you.
by council? Hearing none, Ms. Domingo, please read the roll.
Councilmember Smith,
Yes.
Lawler,
Yes, yes, yes.
Williamson,
Yes.
Clark,
Yes.
Reed,
Yes.
and Mayor Atchison.
Yes. Okay. Next item, item B, discussion approval, first reading of ordinance 2020-04, an ordinance to amend chapter 14, article 2, to add division 5, section 14-112 to 14-115, humane treatment of dogs. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Support.
Okay. Discussion, it was included as read ahead in the package. Does anybody have questions or comments? Hearing none. Ms. Domingo, please read the roll.
Councilmember Reed,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
Lawler,
Yes, yes.
Williamson,
Yes.
Clark,
Yes.
and Mayor Atchison.
Yes. Okay. Next item, item D, request approval, resolution 2020-15, a resolution to approve Calhoun County reciprocal law enforcement agreement. May I have a motion?
I have this.
So moved.
Support.
Okay. Mr. McCleary, do you want to discuss this, or do you wish Chief Kip to chime in?
I think it would be appropriate for the chief to address this item, Mayor.
This agreement is, this agreement is being put in place so that due to the COVID outbreak, if my officers all become ill and we have to have officers from other jurisdictions come into Albion and cover the city, they can do that. In addition, if other departments in the county have officers go ill and we have to send officers there to assist them, this will allow us to do that.
I have a question.
And one question, does this expire when the state of emergency is lifted?
No, we're putting this in place, and I believe the last conversation was for 5 years, and then it would be renewed at that point. This will actually give us the ability to share resources more often than we do currently. It's probably something we should have had in place long before this.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Mayor, if I can offer a comment.
Other comments by council?
So I have a question. So if we bring other officers in from another area, we would assume whatever amount of money, because we would be responsible for paying them at that point, correct?
No, this agreement allows them to work under their own authority in our jurisdiction.
Okay, so we wouldn't have to pay their wages for working in our jurisdiction, is what you're saying?
Correct. It'd be very similar to the mutual aid that we do for fire already.
Okay.
They understand that they would pay their people if they came here, and we would pay our people if we went there.
Okay, thank you.
And Mr. Mayor, I just wanted to add, if I may.
Sure.
So the agreement that was that I reviewed, there was one small issue that I had with it that I sent to the county's corporation council, and that the duration of the agreement would have been a charter conflict for us. Chief, I hadn't heard back from corporation council as of today, but Chief Kip indicated that there was a meeting that apparently happened this morning where Mr. Dyer agreed to modify the agreement such that it was capped at 5 years. So subject to that modification, we should be good to go.
Okay. Are there any other comments or questions by council this evening on this item? Hearing none, Ms. Domingo, please read the roll.
Councilmember Lawler,
Yes, yes.
Williamson,
Yes.
Clark,
Yes.
Reed,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
and Mayor Atchison.
Yes. Okay. Next item, discussion update on Union Steel Building. Mr. McCleary, do you wish to address that?
Your Honor, as the council is aware from the information that went out by Don Tracy earlier today, there was a partial demolition of the structure completed. Part of the building that was deemed to be a public hazard. So that portion was demolished. We invited Krista to be at the meeting tonight to give any further updates or answer any further questions that council may have regarding the Union Steel project. I don't know if Krista is participating in the meeting or not.
I'm here.
Hi, Krista.
Hi, how are you?
Good.
Do you have anything you want to add?
I have a question.
Councilwoman Clark.
Whenever I've noticed whenever there's demolitions with buildings of that size in the city, there becomes a problem to the community because of one, the stray cats, two, the mice, and another one is the bat. So how has that been handled before? Do we address that at all, or is it just does it just become the problem of the members of people that are around it?
So we did address the stray cats. We worked with the Friends of Albion Animals for about a week before the demolition went down to try and relocate them. As far as other critters, we have not done anything. We have not received any complaints any time prior to the demolition for those. And as Mr. McCleary said, we are just moving forward right now with this emergency demolition to remediate the area of the building that was at risk of collapse. We were ready to issue our notice to commence on the full project the day the emergency order from the governor came out. Clearly, we cannot move forward with the rest of the project right now because it's not essential, but we worked with Jim Dyer and the Emergency Operations Center to make sure that we could move forward with this portion so that we could take care of that public safety risk. So right now, the project going forward is not going to be happening until something changes at the state level with the EO. They have, the contractors are on site clearly right now. They told me today they have one more day of work to remove the rubble. So that should occur tomorrow. And then they will be off-site until something changes or we get further guidance on this type of work.
So
I have a question, Mayor.
Wait a minute, wait, my girl. So the
Okay,
answer
go
to my
ahead.
question. So the answer to my question was no. There's nothing in place. Only if you hear, if this is what I heard you say, only if you get complaints. There's nothing put in place before the building itself is actually taken down. Correct?
We put something in place to manage the stray cats. The Friends of Albion Animals did a ton of work prior to the demolitions to relocate as many of those stray cats as they could. And my understanding is that they were successful, at least in part, in doing a relocation of cats. But the other animals that you mentioned, we've never received any comments about. And what we are required to do under a demolition is remediate asbestos and things like that. And those things we have taken care of. But that's where we are with this project.
Okay, Councilman
Because the
Lowe.
only reason why I was asking for future reference, because I lived around a lot of the demolition that has happened in the city. My house was there, and I did get an infestation of bats at one time, and I didn't know, I didn't know if that was a city thing or not. I just dealt with it. So I'm just wondering if other people in the city have that problem or see that problem and they don't know that there's anything that could come for if there's any type of help for that problem. That's why I asked.
Okay, Councilwoman Lawler, you have a question or comment?
Yes, yes, I do. Krista, can you help me with something as far as will there be any information given out to the people in the area about the demolition not going forward and why? Or do I need to, kind of let people know what's going on? Because I know I'm gonna get the calls in a minute.
Yeah, we did a press release last week with that information, and then we targeted a Facebook post to the city of Albion that got a pretty good reach on it. And before the executive order, we walked the neighborhood and we handed out information about when that start date would happen. Clearly now we can't do that because it's not going to be deemed essential. So we wouldn't be able to do really anything else. We can share our Facebook, I think the city or maybe it was Albion Public Safety, somebody shared our Facebook post and helped us, get that word out. So that's all we can do right now under the executive order. And we didn't get any questions at the land bank about it. So I felt like we got some good reach with what we put out last week.
Okay, I was just asking because I know I'm probably gonna get a million calls or emails about the progress of it. So I'll just do the best I can.
Right, and I mean, it's really tricky right now because none of us know exactly what's gonna happen, right? We don't know when the executive order is going to be released. And it took us quite some time to get the approval to move forward with this emergency portion of it, kind of working through what the executive order meant and what our contractors could safely do while maintaining social distancing and all of that. And it is sort of ever changing, but I think we're waiting for more information from the state right now.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Councilman Williamson.
Hey, I just wanted to, my comment on this discussion was going to say thank you to the land bank for their commitment to Albion and bringing down the Union Steel building. very appreciative of this building coming down. And in fact, over the last few months, we've realized that Albion is not on the hook for as much money as we thought we were to help bring it down. So there's just been some really great developments around this project. Thank you, Krista. And thank you to everyone who made that happen to get this going.
I'm not sure if what you're referring to is the additional funding that was in last year's appropriation request that just came through. You're shaking your head yes, so let me update you on that. That money was, that 250,000 was going to go to the land bank. It was not going to offset our commitment. However, because of COVID-19, the governor has pulled that back with a lot of other appropriations to provide funding in response, disaster funding for COVID-19. However, Representative Hosma says he thinks it's a reasonable hope that when this is all over and said and done with, we may yet get that additional appropriation that will end up being applied to building demolition, environmental abatement in Albion, but not the Union Steel.
It'll be nice to know that information when it comes through again in the future, because the last communication I had on it was that it was. So when we find out things, let's share them. Thanks.
I did at the study session. Okay. Any other questions on that?
Yes, Mayor, I got one more, please.
Go ahead.
Did you or any other council member receive something in an email saying about some funds, emergency funds for Albion? And I didn't read it all, but if you don't have it, I can send it to everyone. But it was saying something about emergency funds coming to Albion. Did anyone else get that?
No.
Okay, I'll send it to you so you can have a look at it and see what it's all about.
Okay. Okay. Next is a discussion and update on City Hall vacancies. Mr. McCleary.
Your Honor, we, as the council's aware, we posted the Public Services Director position. We had announced that we would do first round of review of the applications on April 3rd. We did not receive any applications for that position. We advertised through the Michigan Municipal League. We did not get any response. We are extending the deadline for that advertisement through April 17th. We're hoping we're also expanding our reach and trying to advertise through some other sources to increase our reach, and we'll see what happens with that. But we are extending the deadline on that position advertisement. The Superintendent of Public Works and Superintendent of Public Utilities positions, I'm hoping to have an answer within the next couple days from those employees that I've made offers on those positions to. And the same with the Assistant City Manager, Human Resources Coordinator position. We are now moving down to the next level in public services to try to recruit for the Chief Wastewater Treatment Plant Operator position and the foreman in the Public Works. And we have some other vacancies that are going to be opening up in a month, a little over a month, because of some retirements that are happening. And that is the latest. I did include information on that in my last manager's report, and council should have just received a report from me today as well.
Okay. Questions from council on City Hall vacancies?
Oh, Your Honor, I did also want to mention the Code Enforcement Officer position. That position, the advertisement closed on March 20th. We received 5 applications for that position. The Director of Building Planning and Code Enforcement is reviewing those applications. And his intention is to work with the HR coordinator to do some type of remote interviewing for that position. But again, one thing I want to note for council is that all of our physical examinations for any new hires is on hold right now. The clinics are not doing physicals. So we're doing the best we can to try to work with that situation. But we did receive 5 applications for that position.
Thank you.
I have a question. I didn't quite understand when you were talking about the assistant city manager and the human resources position. I didn't quite understand where you said that was at, what part of the process you said that was at.
Sure. An offer has been made to the candidate for that position, the top candidate for that position. And I am waiting to hear back from her on an answer. And I'm hoping that for all 3 of those positions that I have made offers to, that we can get that wrapped up this week. The assistant city manager position, as well as the 2 superintendents in public services.
Okay, thank you.
Were any of these ran through MML or just through health?
The public services director position was posted through the Michigan Municipal League. The other recruitments were done internally. So we made offers to internal candidates.
Councilman Williamson.
Hey, I know we were recruiting some public safety officers. Did we get any?
4.
Yeah, there were 4 positions, and the chief made offers to 4 candidates. Chief, you may want to touch base on whether or not you're having the same problem with the physicals. I thought that we were able to get one of the candidates through the physical, but the other 3 candidates we were still having issues with. Is there any update on that?
Yeah, one of the officers, Scott Osted, started last week. He's a 20-year veteran of the Calhoun County Sheriff's Department. The next person will be starting on the 13th of April, the 3rd person on the 20th of April, and the 4th person on the 27th. The one starting on the 13th is already a sworn police officer, so they can begin their training right away. The one starting on the 20th has been through the police academy, but it's been 3 years, so they have to go through what they call the retread school. The problem with that is it was scheduled for April 17th, but now it's been canceled because of COVID. The next one's not till June, so hopefully we can get them into the June one. We'll have to see from there, but they're still going to start some of their training. And then the one starting on the 27th is a certified firefighter, but not the police. They were supposed to start the police academy on May 4th, but I don't think that's going to happen either at that point, but they can still go through the fire training portion of what we do.
I have a question.
Go ahead, Councilwoman Lawler.
Were any minority?
No.
Okay, thank you.
Any further questions on City Hall vacancies? Hearing none, we'll move to discussion of city issues with city cell phones. Mr. McCleary.
Your Honor, just for clarification, we are talking about the issue with city employees receiving personal cell phone accounts through the city. Is that correct?
Yes.
So very shortly after I arrived as city manager, it was brought to my attention that there were some city employees who were able to piggyback onto the city's cell phone account to receive a better rate for personal cell phone service. I had some concerns with that, and so in December I discontinued that program. and required all of our employees who did have cell phone accounts under that program to arrange for their own independent cell phone accounts. We ran into a problem with some employees who were in arrears on paying on their cell phone accounts, and the city ended up paying on those accounts for them. We are collecting those monies from those employees. They are, if it was more than $200 that they owed, we worked out payment arrangements with those employees so that they would pay at least $200 a month until they had those accounts paid off. And I can tell you that employees are making a good faith effort to pay off those accounts.
Any questions from council on cell phones? Hearing none, we'll move into the discussion of expanding essential city services during Michigan's COVID-19 state of emergency. Councilwoman Clark and Councilwoman Reed had brought this up with me. So if one of you would like to go forward and jump in and explain and discuss.
Okay, so one of the questions I had was, because I don't think there's a determination, or I'm not quite clear of what an essential employee is and opposed to a non-essential. And I think that's one thing that we need to have defined. And I realize this is the first time this type of pandemic has ever happened. So just for future references, so that if something should occur again, we will have things more in place. And if people ask me questions in the public, I would be able to answer them more clearly. And then the other thing is the pictures that I sent to everybody this week, those particular areas were addressed when I first came on council, and I spoke to the proper people in place to get those addressed, and they're worse than what they were last year. So that current situation is something that's been ongoing that was never taken care of. And I know Councilman Al had said to me, I had said in the last meeting that, people can go out and take care of those items themselves, because he does that, and there's other people that take care of that. And in this particular neighborhood, this gentleman has been taking care of an area that is definitely deemed as city property, and keeping things like, as you could see on the pictures, needles and other paraphernalia that was that's dumped there on a regular basis. But for some reason, that area of my precinct doesn't seem to get addressed, or any type of repairs or street repairs or anything, because the street is literally dirt. So in that area. So I just wanted to look at, I was asking because I don't know what non-essential is compared to essential. And to me, if you're writing, I see a lot of people that work for cable companies and other things like that are still doing work because they're doing outside work. So that's where my questions came in at.
I guess that's kind of the way I saw it too, and I've had calls from people about the piles of where the trees were cut down and the stuff was ground up, and the wind is blowing it all into their yards and things like that. Also, water, where the water runs down off of the street down into the sewer, those are all plugged up with leaves. All down Albion Street, I was looking when I was coming from assisting a senior citizen, and there was just leaves just all over the street and everything. A lot of houses up there are I don't know, they're look like they should be torn down soon. Maybe the land bank has them now, I'm not sure. But anyway, it's just, to me, it seems like I'm like Vicky now, essential. Keeping the city clean, keeping it picked up, because if a worker's on one side of the street and then the worker's on the other side of the street cleaning up the leaves and stuff, they're not close enough to each other. They're more than 6 feet apart. And I was talking to some people in Battle Creek that was saying some of their city workers are still working on things for the city. This is a perfect time because spring is just coming in. You don't have the leaves on the trees and everything yet to get things cleaned up, straightened up, back, whatever needs to be done in the parks, along the streets, and all of that ground up tree stuff out of the way while people are staying at home and in their homes. Now, when the pandemic, when they decide that you can get back out and do things, that's when you're going to have cars out in the street. That's going to be dangerous to workers trying to work, trying to fill the holes. And that's another thing. I was just thinking, the street thing, this is a perfect time to pull it out and patch up some of these holes, because you don't see a lot of cars out. Some cars, but not a lot of cars. And so I was just thinking, not to put anybody's life in danger, but they said it's not being blown around in the air. And that would be the perfect time to get some of these outside things that we need to get done. Because if you wait until later in the summer, it's going to be a mess.
And just to add to that, I did call some other counties to see if their city workers were working, and just to make sure that I wasn't off. Not to challenge anybody else, but a lot of times I always check my own understanding by asking other people, and I did find out that yes, that those were some areas, because it was outside and they're not necessarily around people, that it was still being carried through.
Your Honor, if I could respond. First of all, I want to say to each and every one of you and to our citizens who are listening, this is a frustrating time for everybody, and I completely understand that. We are doing our best to try to comply with the governor's executive order 2020-21, which requires people to shelter in place, except for very specific exceptions. It determines critical infrastructure workers to be those workers who are performing work that sustains or protects life. So we have to make sure that whatever work we're having our employees perform has to meet that guideline. There's also an exception for finance employees who have to maintain basic business functions, okay? So that's why we do have some of our finance employees working at City Hall. They work on a rotating basis. We make sure that they're maintaining social distancing as they're supposed to be under the guidelines. But the governor's order followed the CISA guidelines for critical infrastructure workers. CISA is the Federal Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency. They define who are critical infrastructure workers. And there's several categories that they use, including public works, when they're performing functions that sustain or protect life. Now, there are some things, so we have to address some of these issues as they come up and they become a health issue for us. For example, if we've got flooding in the streets and we've got to go and clear the catch basins so that we can alleviate the flooding, that is an acceptable reason to have public services employees out working. Some of the other things that are more aesthetic, even though I know they're very frustrating, looking at the community and seeing some of the things that make the community look unsightly, if they don't rise to the level of sustaining or protecting life, or meet one of the other exceptions, we can't have our workers doing it. We will be violating the law Our employees would be violating the law if they're performing the work. And Cullen may be able to speak more to this, but we've got to be very careful about what we're having our employees doing. So we looked at each department, we looked at the functions that they perform, we identified those that do fall within the critical infrastructure worker guidelines, and we're trying to perform those functions the best that we can. Some of them, our public services employees are on call and will come in and do work as we need them to do it. At some point when the parks or cemetery need work to make sure that they're not creating any health hazards, our employees will be coming in to perform that work. They are on call. Our water and wastewater treatment plant employees, they are working. They're working on split shifts, but they are coming in and performing that work as needed. So we are trying to do the best that we can to identify what we can have employees doing and having them do it. Our other employees are working from home to the extent that they possibly can. And I outlined in my report for the council today, as well as I spoke about it on Friday as well, about what they're doing from home. So we're trying to do the best we can under a difficult situation, and I know that the council appreciates that. But I also know that it's frustrating for you and your constituents when it looks like nothing's being done, but there is a lot being done behind the scenes that people don't realize.
Councilman Williamson.
I was just going to ask, so for the kind of like the frontline city workers, the people who would be filling potholes, tree trimming, cleaning up public spaces, it sounds like they're on call. Are they getting paid their full wage?
Yes.
So has there been anything done to assess what are the critical infrastructure needs of the community that can be taken care of by public works employees? And I know these questions are frustrating to you because you feel like you're operating under a certain type of order, but which we are. But I'm trying to figure out how are we going to maximize this time as much as we can. Because, and you can understand my frustration with the entire time I've been on council. We got to create a plan and we have to do an assessment, and then and then now we have a pandemic and we can't do anything. And so I'm trying to figure out how are we turning this downside moment into an upside for hopefully in optimistically June, July, August. A lot of work is being done, and I guess I'm frustrated because I do hear from constituents that we're paying people to stay at home, and that's for some. Are we eligible for the assistance through the different relief programs? Like, what's happening with all of that?
Well, the CARES program allows us to be reimbursed for expenses that are specifically related to COVID-19 and are above and beyond our normal operations. So we are monitoring that. We are tracking all of our COVID-19 specific expenses through the finance department so that we can seek reimbursement at the appropriate time. We are trying to look at other ways to take advantage of this situation. I've asked department heads to look at any type of training that employees can take advantage of remotely while they are at home, so that some of the training that we can accomplish while they're at home, we can get accomplished. So there are a number of things that we're looking at to try to take advantage of the situation the best that we can. The one thing that I would note for the council, though, is the alternative for us to keeping our employees on the payroll would be to lay them off. And if we were to lay them off, then they're not available to do any work that we need them to do. So it is a trade-off. Right now, I can call, or our department heads can call any of our employees to come in and do essential work that needs to be done at a moment's notice, and they'll come in and perform that work. If we laid them off, it's a whole process to get them back to work. So they can't respond as timely as we may want them to respond if we need them to do work. The other thing is a lot of our employees live locally, and as you know, with the impact economically of the COVID-19 situation, I believe strongly that by keeping our employees on the payroll, it helps to mitigate even just a little bit the local economic situation.
Councilman Williamson.
Yeah, I want to add, last year I know there were 20 or 30 trees identified as critical, associated power lines, possible damage to buildings and businesses, and I'm hoping that we're maybe making some progress on those in the meantime, if we're not doing some other things.
Well, there have been a number of trees that over the past year have been removed, trimmed, what have you. Concerns were raised about the contractor that has been performing that work for us since I think 1995. There has been no contract in place for a number of years, and so it's a legitimate concern that was raised about no contract being in place. Right now, Public Services staff, our acting DPS director, is working on preparing specifications so that we can go out to bid and put a new contract in place for those services. And what I would hope that we do is we would look at the contractors that do bid on this and maybe get 2 or 3 separate contracts in place so that we have backup contractors available to do the work if one is not available. But Acting Director Larkey is working on that.
Go ahead.
Right now, unless it's to kind of further elaborate on your question, though, unless it is a protection or sustaining of life issue, the tree removal contractor should not be performing work.
I would like to 3 council members to volunteer to have a conference call with Mr. McCleary later in this week to explore this a little bit more in detail, bring specific things. And since Councilwoman Reed, you brought this up, as has Councilman Clark, if you're willing, I'd like you to do that along with one other council member. And I see Councilman Williamson is raising his hand. So if that is acceptable to you, Councilwoman Clark?
No, well, I feel like I've already addressed it, and he said that if flooding or anything like that is going to occur, then that's something that they should address. And I'm one of these people that pay attention to weather because I just do that. And as he was speaking, I went over to the weather. So we have the same conditions coming towards us again tomorrow, Saturday, and Sunday. So this area will probably flood again because it's got 60% chances of rain. So I sent the information out to him already. So I don't think it's necessary for me to call him and tell him and speak to him again about it.
But you have said you've spoken with other municipalities, other areas. And so I think that information, because perhaps some of this may be one interpretation of the rules, what you can, what you can't do. I've read different things and I can see where there is different interpretations. But if you're not interested in doing that, can I get Councilwoman Reed, will you participate in that?
Yeah, I would. Because if they're going to do Irwin Avenue and out the other street out there by the bridge, I can't understand how she can allow some workers to do stuff like that, other workers not to.
So I have Councilwoman Reed, Councilman Williamson. I need one other council member, Councilmember Smith. So City Manager, if you would look at your schedule, pick something later on and coordinate with those 3 council members. If any other council members have concerns, specific questions, specific functions, please get it to one of the 3 subcommittee members, which consist of Councilwoman Reed, Councilman Smith, and Councilman Williamson.
And I just like to ask Cullen, how is he reading what the governor is saying?
So it's very fact specific. As the manager referenced, there's different categories that CISA has broken up as critical infrastructure, and it ranges everything from chemical sector all the way down to water and wastewater systems. So it really depends on what the specific work is. I think, you know, by way of example, if we had a street that had a large pothole in the middle of it that, you know, was causing damage to vehicles, I would say that under the highway motor carrier provision under transportation systems, there could be an argument could be made that that is part of critical infrastructure. So it really just depends on the specific facts and the specific work. There's several different categories where it could apply and where it may not apply. I will say that the governor's order says that it's to be construed broadly to prohibit in-person work, but the problem is with a lot of our, with the public services division, it's all kind of hands-on. There's really nothing that can be done remotely. So it's going to depend on each individual situation. Some of it will, you know, could apply under certain sectors. Some of it won't. And I wish I had a better answer for you than that, but unfortunately, it's a very, very broad set of categories.
So it's not possible for somebody to call and find out that information and get a more clear understanding since it's so broad. There's no way for you.
I'll actually tell you, Councilwoman Clark, I actually participated in a webinar with the Lieutenant Governor where he was actually a lot of municipalities. Actually, the manager was on the webinar with me, and he was supposed to provide that guidance. And what he did was get online, give everybody a pat on the back, and say good job, and then gave absolutely no direction whatsoever. So, unfortunately, the little bits of guidance are trickling down from MML, but quite frankly, the higher ups don't even know how to interpret it. So everyone is kind of taking the reins on their own.
Okay, so my last comment on this, and then we can move on to the next item, is with the example you provided as city attorney, big pothole in street, that is something that could be addressed. Lord knows we have many, many potholes across the city, and if we have roads that are down to dirt, that would constitute a giant pothole perhaps. So if if any other council members, myself, anybody else has other issues and questions, if you get them to one of the 3 subcommittee members, that would be great. And city manager, if you would follow up and have a detailed discussion, and we'll see if there is some additional things, or if not that, then a much better understanding on our part. Okay. Any last comments? It looks like Councilmember Williamson has a comment.
Just one thing. I want to make a goal of the meeting that we're going to talk about this. Like maybe we're going to need to involve Cullen at some point to provide a legal opinion, because I think there's going to be a lot of ideas about what should and could be done. And I think it'd be nice if once we figure that out with the manager, that we get a legal opinion to make sure we're following within the law.
Okay. Next item, item I, discussion approval to temporarily ban open burning of yard waste or debris within the city of Albion. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Is there support? I will support. Okay, so discussion, I asked this be added on here. I received a few comments and concerns from residents with the burning that's been going on. It is currently legal, but the point that was brought up is now that we have a contract with Granger that provides for hauling away, it's across the city, hauling away yard waste and whatnot, do we still need to do this? And Colin, please correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe the standard across the state of Michigan is no burning within municipalities, but there is a provision if your municipality has less than 10,000 population, a local municipality can put in place an ordinance that allows it with whatever provisions and restrictions they wish. Is that correct?
That's the gist of it. And I would say our open burning ordinance has, with the exception, with some very minor exceptions like recreational fires and road flares and things like that, it's a permit process. I don't know if anyone has applied for and received a permit. But I would offer this. The fire chief, or in this case, our chief of public safety, can do a citywide burn ban, if you know, as a simpler method. Because, like I said, we've got this ordinance in place, and I think that might be an easier route for the city to go if to put that open burning, or even if temporary burn ban in place. I don't know if the chief wants to speak to that, but.
Chief Kidd?
Yeah, I can speak to that. We do have several permits out there currently. Without a specific reason to put a burn ban in place, I didn't see that it was my job to do that. If council feels that it's necessary, I think it'd be a better decision for council to make at this point. Usually burn bans are put in place by the chief when we have really dry weather or those type of things, and I don't have that specific reason right now.
Councilman Smith?
Yes, I've had contact by constituents on both sides of this. One by one gentleman who does have a permit in hand, who was going to take care of some rubble from a new piece of property that he acquired. So he wants to be able to use the permit that he took the time to go and get. He's been planning on doing this, and frankly, he'd like to take care of the rubble around his house. And of course, on the other side of that, you know, I've gotten emails from another constituent who is, you know, lady who has asthma, and people around her have pulmonary problems and things of that nature, and people are burning yard waste. As the mayor pointed out, at this point in time, by our ordinance, it is legal. We are within that window, which goes to, I believe, April 14th. So through that time, it's actually legal. After that, I guess it has to be all permitted, other than recreational, road flares, blah, blah, blah. But I would not be in favor of a ban at this point in time, because there are, as the chief said, there are permits out there that people have been making plans to take care of some stuff around their property. And I don't think it would be a good thing to basically jerk the rug out from under those people at this point. I yield.
Chief, did you say the period expires on the 14th of April?
Yes.
Okay.
And what I would maybe offer to council, I mean, maybe this is an easier solution for you, because realistically, to ban burning, given that you have this ordinance in place, would more or less require you to rescind the ordinance. I don't know that you want to eliminate the ordinance completely. Maybe the simpler way to go is, given that the time period for open burning expires on April 14th and then doesn't start again until October 1, maybe we just decide not to issue any more permits for the next 8 days.
And what I did have in mind is temporarily ban it while we have a chance to look at the ordinance and make whatever changes, or just get rid of the ordinance altogether. And maybe you can help me understand why the state law makes a differentiation between municipalities above 10,000, where you can't, you don't have the option of putting it in place, and municipalities below 10,000, you can.
I don't know why they did that.
I have a question.
Councilwoman Lawler.
Okay, thank you. I also have some people asking me about burning permits, because they are experiencing high costs if they have a large yard for the bags to put the leaves in. And I'm just not sure if I really want to ban the leaf burning thingy. But I really I guess it's really more convenient for them to burn it than to put it in a bag. So that's just my comment, coming from some of the 4th precinct people, and that's where I stand on that. Thank you.
Any other comments? Councilman Smith.
I would caution council members to look up the ordinance. It is in the ordinances, chapter 66, section 150. That's where the whole ordinance on this whole thing is. Please read that through carefully so that you can advise your constituents correctly.
Okay. So any other comments? Anybody wish to move to table this?
I'd just like to know, well, I don't know, well, when are we getting the things from Granger?
We should be receiving the yard waste carts within the next 1 to 2 weeks.
Until then, they're still picking up the bags though,
Yes,
on Wednesday as usual?
they're picking them up on your regular, on the regular yard waste pickup days. Yes.
They pick mine's up on Wednesday, Miss Reed.
I think it is Wednesdays.
Yeah. So, and this is a good time to make sure everyone is aware that now it's unlimited yard waste pickup. So you can put as many bags out as you want and it doesn't cost you any more.
Councilman Williamson.
Move to table.
Okay. I support. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, we'll table this. Okay, discussion status of Albion tree dump and status of environmental cleanup. Mr. McCleary.
Your Honor, as far as the tree dump is concerned, as council is probably aware, I believe last year, Eagle had discussions with the city about compliance of the tree dump with environmental regulations. The tree dump, as you know, has been operated for I don't know how many decades, a long, long time. And the tree dump was never registered with the state as a compost facility. As a result, from what I understand, the material that we have stored at that facility far exceeds what we are allowed to have stored there for an unregistered facility. Eagle told the Department of Public Services last year that they had to start reducing the amount of material that was there by, I believe it was about 60%, 60%. Acting Director Lurkey has been in contact with Eagle and is talking to them and working with them to get our facility registered so that we can store more material than what we would be allowed to store without it being registered. They're requiring windrows be created to help compost the materials. And Mr. Lurkey is working on other details with Eagle. So that is something that the department staff is working on to bring into compliance with state regulations.
Did Eagle also raise an issue of our compost not being screened to remove trash and other debris?
I'm not aware that they had that discussion, but my discussions with the acting director of public services is that we are trying to look for contractors who may be interested in the material, who has the ability to properly screen the material so that it is cleaned and can be used as topsoil. So Mr. Lurkey is looking into that.
Have over the past year or while you've been here as city manager, has any of that material, the bulk of it that we had to get rid of 60%, has any of it been moved out of the tree dump and deposited someplace else?
Well, I was just made aware of the fact that either last fall or in the very early months of this year, the very early months of winter, there was material moved from the tree dump to Rieger Park. I have asked the department to review that material that was moved to Rieger Park and to identify the areas that it was moved to and whether or not that material needs to be excavated, moved back to the tree dump, and then properly disposed of.
Okay, that actually took place in March last month.
Okay, that's not what I was told, but we are looking into that.
Okay, and the yellow backhoe, the city backhoe, was out there again today in Rieger Park. Don't know if they were adding, removing, or whatever. But as I sent an email out with some photos, there's a few residents over there on Walnut Street that are not happy because there's plastic and other matter protruding up from what was dumped there. Councilman Williamson, you had your hand up, I thought.
No, that's okay.
Oh, sorry, Councilman Smith.
Okay, I have a few things on this matter. No, pardon me, I can't lay my hands on the operating instructions for the tree dump. All I can go on is on what we're told. We've been told that in the past you have to have a permit to dump anything in there. I think it was like $10 a year to get a permit to dump at the tree dump. It was only to be open at certain hours on certain weekends of the months. Right now, the gates stand open 24/7. Anybody from anywhere can go in there and dump anything. Right now, actually, as the 17th last month, I went over there and took a series of pictures of sawmill slag, the scrap off of trees and stuff that a sawmill can't use. Probably about 10 to 12 or more loads of that was dumped in our tree dump, along with probably 4 or 5 truckloads of wood chip from a sawmill. These are fresh, so they haven't been laying around a long time. There were large parts of trees that were obviously rotted out in the center that couldn't be used in the milling process, so they were dumped in there as well. Oh my, a whole lot of stuff going on in there. There's evidence of at least 3 trees that have been removed very recently. These were tall, live, mature trees that were removed. There's no evidence of any lumber being still around from that. No evidence of any timber being given to the city from that. I would like to know who took those trees, where the contract is, where's the money for it, who authorized it, whose name's on the contract for that. A lot of things in this. The whole pile of stuff that was laying there on the 17th, I went back with another council person on the 29th. There was just a big smoldering mass laying there, still burning underneath. And it's part of the under Chapter 66 in 150. It does state that any open burning shall be constantly attended until the fire is extinguished. And it was laying there smoldering on a very windy day. And the tree dump, if you've ever been back in there, wear your boots. But if you ever go back in there, everything in there is very, very dry. So a smoldering heap laying there, if the wind picks it up and whips it into the wrong area, we're looking at a forest fire on our hands on the edge of our city and around our water treatment plant, which begs another question. Your water treatment plant is standing completely open to everybody who would want to sabotage Albion, but they could go in there and do anything they want just by rolling through that open gate. Many questions are arising here. Probably my biggest question is, who is authorizing someone from outside the city? And I have to say that because I don't know of anybody within our city limits who has a sawmill. So someone from outside the city who is not a resident, not a taxpayer, is bringing their scrap in here and using our place for their dump. Who authorized that? Where's the contract? Where's the money? I yield.
Other comments or questions by council, or Mr. McClear, if you want to respond to any of that?
The only thing I would say, Your Honor, is that I will definitely follow up on these concerns and see what I can find out on them.
Thank you. Okay. Okay, next is the discussion of upgrading city video recording equipment and IT resources. I think Chief Kip is probably the expert on what we currently have and its status. So I would invite Chief Kip to address this if he wishes.
The current equipment that we're using, I believe, was bought in the early 2000s. It's kind of outdated from today's equipment. The biggest issue we have is the ability to actually record the meetings. We're still doing that on a DVD where there's digital recorders available. Currently looking at what you can purchase, and from quotes we've gotten in the past, it's going to be somewhere between $8,000 and $15,000 to upgrade all that equipment. We obviously would need to get people to give us actual quotes, but I know we had a company look at it several years ago when Dr. Mitchell was still here, and I believe it was around $12,000 at that time.
Comments or questions by council?
Can we get a breakdown of all the equipment that needs repaired and figure out, you know, what is more important, you know, what costs less, and maybe we could get it would be functional to help us do things around the city.
Councilman
I have
Smith?
a
Councilman Smith, you had your hand up.
I did, but I was going to wait for Chief Kip to answer Councilwoman Clark's question.
I think that may be a larger question for me to answer.
Okay.
So the whole capital improvement planning process is meant to do exactly that, to identify all of our capital needs, both in terms of equipment, vehicles, street improvements, sidewalk improvements, you name it, and then prioritize those capital needs and focus our resources, our limited resources, on the highest priority needs first. So the capital improvement plan would address that.
I have something, Mayor.
Councilwoman Lawler.
Okay, thank you. I can remember in a meeting where Council Member Reed and Council Member Clark was asking department heads to make one wish of something that would that they could have on a wish list that they wish they could, you know, either have fixed or something like that, and turn it into the city manager, just to kind of give us an idea of what needs to be done and prioritize it. Was that ever done?
Nope.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. McClear, did you get those sorts of inputs from anybody? Maybe department heads?
During the budget work sessions, I know that the council had asked department heads to look at that and to give their own requests, I'll have to follow up with department heads. Again, I do have to say, I think that's the wrong approach to take. We need to identify all of our capital needs, look at all of them together, and then prioritize them and funnel our financial resources to those that are the highest need. If we are giving you a list of one need in each department and not looking at all of the needs, then the council can't make an informed decision on where we should be spending our very limited resources. And so we're spreading money around to particular projects or particular expenditures without having the big picture. And I would strongly recommend that the council consider waiting until we present the capital improvement plan this fall that identifies all of the needs that we have in the community so that the council can make an informed decision on where truly you feel we should be funneling our resources.
Good point. I have no objection to that. Councilman Smith.
Raising that question, we have to wait till fall to find out what our capital needs are. A lot of us look around and see them right now. This Fred Flintstone system that we're using in the council chambers has been a vote of contention for years, long before you came, Mr. McCleary. And I don't think there's a council person on the bench now or in the past that hasn't had a problem with it. And so many of our constituents have such a problem just trying to hear that, you know, I appreciate that you may not think this is a big deal. A lot of our constituents do, and we're the ones that are hearing from them. So it does bother me that you're saying we're going to have to put everything on hold or off until this fall when you can come up with a list. Part of that just seems a bit. I yield.
Councilman Williamson. Councilwoman Reed.
I would like to have that list sooner too, because for one thing, I think we've got to start being proactive. It's just like the street cleaning. We need to be proactive. We need to start putting money aside for things, even if we don't have all of the money to purchase something at the time. Start putting something aside for it. At the end of the year, there's a lot of people who are trying to find places to donate money for tax purposes and things like that. I was fortunate enough to get a couple of times from people for Holland Park. They sent it into the city for the Holland Park project. So maybe people around the city would also have money that they would maybe at the end of the year want to put into the fund for whatever is needed around the city. But I really think that we need to start identifying those things early and working on getting in place, writing grants or whatever to get them placed so that we have what we need.
Okay. Any further comments by council? Okay. Next item. Discussion and approval of contract parameters for appointment of special counsel. And before we have a motion, I let the city attorney know that I would ask for his recommendation on what those parameters would be. And then based on that, a council member can make a motion. So city attorney.
Sure. So in terms of parameters, really all I'm looking for is for the council to assign basically a dollar ceiling for this. I would say I don't anticipate it being as complicated as the investigation that was conducted. So I don't think the council needs to look at spending, $10,000. Something I would suggest is doing maybe half of that, and with a provision that if for some reason additional funds are needed, it would have to come back to council for approval. But we're talking about a misdemeanor prosecution, and I was trying to think about this in terms of in terms of retained counsel, you know, if I was going to represent somebody on a misdemeanor, would I charge him more than $5,000? And that would be pretty out there. So my thought was to authorize up to $5,000 for special prosecution. In terms of the individual that I would recommend is an attorney who by the name of Patrick O'Keefe. He's an attorney out of Ingham County, so he's not in Calhoun County. He doesn't know any of the parties involved. He's a former Kent County and Ingham County prosecutor. He now does some defense, well, mostly defense work, but he's a former prosecutor, so he's familiar with this type of thing. And so that's who I would recommend to be the special counsel.
I have a question.
What's your question?
So if we're looking at cost, why is it we can't use our own prosecuting attorney in our county instead of going somewhere else and letting somebody else do it? Is it or isn't it a conflict of interest at that point? It's not if we use the prosecutor here, right? We just can't use talent, right?
So Mr. Dave Gilbert prosecutes violations of state law. This is a local law violation.
So
may I have a motion from council based on our city attorney has given his recommendation. May I have a motion?
Oh, wow, because I wanted to comment.
We'll have discussion after the motion. I'll make the motion. The motion is to approve up to $5,000 to contract with Patrick O'Keefe as special counsel. Is there a second?
Support.
Okay, discussion.
Point of information, Vicky did have a comment followed by Marcola. So I just want to throw that out there.
Councilwoman Lawler.
Is Councilmember Clark finished? I wanted her to be able to finish her statement.
Yeah, because that's, so is there a law or something that's in place that's saying that he can't do that?
Well, I guess hypothetically we could approach him and see if he wants to contract with the city to do it, but the county prosecutor has no authority under state law to prosecute ordinance offenses. He only has the authority to prosecute state law offenses. So we would have to empower him to do that, but I can't imagine he would want to do that voluntarily. I think we could hypothetically contract with him to do that.
All right. So council has already approved by resolution hiring a special counsel. Now we are setting the parameters of the contract to hire that counsel. So did you have other comments or questions, Councilwoman Clark?
We approved it by resolution to hire someone else different?
Yeah.
No, I thought we just approved by resolution to go forward with the investigation of this. Or
I absolutely may be wrong, but can you clarify that for us? Your city manager or the city attorney, did the council pass by resolution to hire a special counsel?
Yes, to hire special counsel. We didn't specify who or how much or anything like that.
Okay, so we approved by resolution to hire a special counsel. The matter before us is to set the parameters of the contract. We hire somebody, we have a contract. Councilwoman Lawler.
Okay, thank you. So I'm just wondering, I know last time that we had investigation done, our city manager made the request. Why are we having Cullen make the request, please?
Cullen is not making the request. Cullen is providing a recommendation. I'm not a lawyer. I don't know what a reasonable figure is to put in the contract parameters, and that's why I asked our attorney to make a recommendation. He has not requested anything.
Oh, okay, because I heard him state a name, so
He made a recommendation as to who to hire, but he didn't request that we do that.
Okay, well, I was just wondering, are we switching it up or what was going on? I didn't quite.
If memory serves me correct, the last time it was the tasking was for the city manager to work with the city attorney to hire somebody with a contract limit of not to exceed $10,000. And I think that's perfectly fine if that's what we want to do. I can amend my motion to limit it to just the cap, and then the city manager can work with the city attorney and they can go forth and hire somebody.
Okay, that's perfect.
Any other comments by council? Okay. So the motion as amended is to direct the city manager and city attorney to work together to hire a special counsel not to exceed $5,000 without coming back to council to request more funding. Okay. If there's no other comments, hearing none, Mr. Domingo, read the roll, please.
Mr. Mayor, I would just, given that you're making an amendment to your motion, you should probably vote on the amendment and then vote on your motion.
I thought it was a friendly amendment, but that's fine.
I'm sorry, I may have missed that.
Yeah. The amended motion is to direct the city manager to work with the city attorney to hire a special counsel with the limit of the contract to be $5,000. May I have a second?
Support.
Okay. Ms. Domingo, would you read the roll?
Councilmember Williams,
Yes.
Yes. Oh, I didn't hear you. Go ahead.
Councilmember Clark,
I'm not hearing anything.
Me either.
Me either.
It's back. It's back.
Ms. Domingo, would you start from the top again, please?
Councilmember Williamson,
Yes.
Clark,
No.
Reed,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
Lawler,
No.
and Mayor Atchison.
Yes. Okay, next item. Discussion approval to modify City Ordinance 2019-09 ethics to specify it is unethical for any city elected official to serve as a city poll worker during any election. I will make that motion. Is there support?
Support.
Okay. So since I made the motion, put it on the agenda, this is my explanation of this. Michigan election laws prohibit assigning poll workers who are a challenger, candidate, or a member of the candidate's immediate family. Immediate family is defined as the individual's father, mother, brother, sister, spouse, and any relative residing in the same household with that person. These prohibitions are in place for good reason, to avoid even the appearance of a conflict of interest. Each year, our voting process faces intense scrutiny, and a commitment to ethics is essential. Even the best written laws, regulations, policies, or standards will pale in comparison to the personal ethics of each election worker. Local politics can be very contentious and polarizing, particularly in small communities such as Albion. This can lead some voters to believe that local elected officials will favor one candidate over another based on personal, financial, political, or another bias. Our local elected officials are in the unique position of working very closely with each of the three members who make up our city's election commission: the city clerk, the head of public safety, and the city attorney. This commission assigns and approves who is assigned to be poll workers for each precinct. This puts our election commission and our elected local officials in an unnecessary perception of potential conflict of interest. Our current ethics ordinance requires all city council members to act for the common good of the people of Albion and not for any private or personal interest. The outcome of every local election for Albion mayor and precinct council seat clearly is a matter with substantial personal interest for each elected official. Therefore, it is unethical for any member of city council to serve as a poll worker. As a body, our city council can and should make it clear that we fully support the principle that the citizens of Albion are entitled to have fair, ethical, and accountable local government that is worthy of the public's full confidence. I urge my colleagues on council to embrace and uphold the principles of transparency, integrity, and accountability by voting to modify City Ordinance 2019-09 ethics to specify it is unethical for any city elected official to serve as a city poll worker during any election. Are there comments or questions by council?
So
I have one.
Councilwoman Clark, you were first.
Financial also would be considered unethical,
I did not hear your full question.
or somebody to work as a poll worker.
I didn't hear your full question.
There was a part of that where you mentioned the financial part of it, correct? That would be considered as an unethical.
And I'm looking for my statement where I said financial. I'm sure it's in here somewhere. Well, the point of this is that there is no secret that every member of council has personal interest in the outcome of the elections. And that's just the aspect of local politics. And so by having a special working relationship with all three members of the election commission, there will always be people that raise the objection that, well, see, this isn't quite right or whatever. Okay, so it puts the election commission and all members of council in this circumstance where there's the appearance of potential conflict of interest, the conflict of interest being personal gain, personal interest in the outcome of an election. So to avoid that, to send the message that we absolutely are committed to transparency and integrity, and to be beyond even the appearance of reproach, that it's not appropriate, not ethical for council members to serve as poll workers. That's the gist of it.
So would you go back and read the financial part of that, please?
All I'm finding, to be honest, is personal interest.
You said financial.
Oh, okay, this could lead some voters to believe that local elected officials will favor one candidate over another based on personal, financial, political, or some other basis.
So isn't that kind of?
Councilman Williamson.
I want to move to table this to another meeting. I think we can give it some more thought, but I think, given the current state of affairs, I think that arguing over this one piece, particularly now, probably isn't good form. So I move to table.
Support.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Nay. Okay, we'll table it.
Well, thank you for not letting me answer my question.
You're welcome.
But I'll answer.
No, she did have a question.
What's that?
Say, Councilwoman Lawler did have a question after Councilwoman Clark. She just got missed.
That's okay. That's okay, Al. It's perfectly fine. It's all right.
No, ma'am. Please speak your time. Please speak your piece. I'll back
No,
you.
the mayor has spoken. I'll just wait till we set a date to table it. I'm fine.
What is your question?
I'm fine. I'll wait till we set a date to table it, and then I'll express it then. I'm okay. Thank you.
Well, we've already tabled it, so the date is today. We'll move on to the next item. Discussion approval to direct the city manager to review past practices of the city regarding compensation of essential employees during city hall closures or other extended disruptions to the city operations. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Is there support? Okay, I'll support it. So we do have a memorandum here from the city manager. All of you were, it was emailed to you with an explanation of compensation for essential personnel. And I have spoken with a couple of the council members, several of whom were not in favor of any additional compensation, and some that were. So that's why it's on the agenda. And so we have, like I said, we have the city manager's memorandum. If you want to summarize your memo there, city manager.
Sure, Your Honor, thank you. So I am aware that there have been some questions raised about how we are handling compensation for those essential workers who are working during this public health emergency, and whether or not we're providing additional compensation of some type to those employees, to compensate them for the fact that they are reporting to work while other employees are working from home. And I think it's important to understand that, there are two different situations. One is if we are like for a snow emergency where I make the determination we are closing City Hall for the day because of a snowstorm. And so employees stay at home and I'm not requiring them to work. That basically is tantamount to establishing a holiday for some employees. And I think in that particular situation, we should be providing some type of consideration to those employees who did report to work, who were scheduled to work and did report to work during that weather emergency, because that day was treated as a holiday for other employees. That is not the case in this particular situation. In this situation, we have some employees who have been designated as essential employees and are working, reporting to work because they are essential employees. But we have other employees who are working from home to the extent that they possibly can. So it's not a matter of us treating this emergency as holiday time for employees. Employees are still performing work at home, whether it's being available on call to come in and do work as we need them to, or whether, as many of us are doing, we're simply working from home. And I wish I could turn my laptop around and show you my dining room table right now. But the memo that I provided to council was to clarify how I would look at these situations. If we are closing City Hall or particular functions of the city, and we are not requiring those employees to work during that day, that should be looked at as a holiday situation. And so we should be providing the same consideration to all of the employees, all of the employees who were scheduled to work, some of whom still reported to work and was not given the same consideration of a holiday. For those situations where some functions are being closed, but we are still asking those employees to work remotely, that is not a holiday situation. Some employees have to report to work, some are working from home, and therefore no additional compensation should be provided to any employee. We are all working. So that was the gist of my memo to council to try to clarify how I look at these situations.
Thank you. It did clarify for me, and you've stated here several times, that essentially all of the employees are still working. They're just working remotely. That's not the circumstances that I understood. So thank you. Any other comments by council? Okay, hearing none. Then the motion before us is to direct the city manager to review past practices regarding employee compensation. Ms. Domingo, would you read the roll?
Councilmember Reed,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
Lawler,
Yes.
Williamson,
Yes.
Hart,
Yeah.
Mayor Atchison.
Yes. Thank you. Okay, future agenda items. Let's see. Councilman Smith.
Yes, I'd like to discuss the contract or lack thereof for tree trimming.
Okay.
I'd like to discuss within the hiring of people, someone who can write grants.
I can't see you, Councilwoman Clark. Do you have future agenda items?
Yes, I would like to get a clear definition on essential and non-essential workers for us to have some information of that in the next meeting.
Councilwoman Lawler. Councilwoman Lawler, do you have future agenda items? Councilmember Williamson.
No, I don't.
All right, public comments.
All right, it appears I have
Persons with
all right,
3
three
minutes.
hands. Catherine Sawchuk. All right, she's not answering. Mr. Brown.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hello?
Go ahead.
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. So just I want to clarify the item A. So as I went back and read the ordinance before you all modified it. It does say that there's a consultation with the council, but I think that what Attorney Harkness was doing that wasn't helpful in clarifying it is saying the ordinance sets a template. So it says, you know, there could be a template that has sections A, B, and C for compensation, severance, whatnot, different sections. But what there's a difference between the template sections and the actual terms that go in those sections. And so I don't think that it's at all an overreach of council to ask that, to at least require that a notification be given to council of that change. A notification is not requiring the council to approve or like go back and ratify something that the manager has already done. But I do think that needs to be there so there is a change, because what could end up happening is you could have, again, it opens the door for a corrupt intent there for a manager to know, for example, that a department head has done something and go back and before they are on the chopping block to give them a golden parachute without council knowing, right? So I still think the council has an opportunity to go back and to amend to at least require notification, not necessarily consultation or approval. Those would probably be oversteps in the council's policymaking power. The other thing I would say regarding the prosecution thing, again, is that in my comments this evening, I did send an email to all the council members at length, because I knew I wouldn't have enough time to speak. That goes into more detail about these issues. But I think that it's bad form and really kind of hypocritical to have a situation where one council member actually admitted to breaking the Michigan Open Meetings Act law, and then to not do that and not address that. So one thing that I appreciate about the criminal justice system in this country is that it'll allow former Mayor Pro Tem Brown to obviously defend herself thoroughly. But I think that that's really a dark mark on those on the council who did support that. And I do know that the attorney that was referenced is a former prosecutor, is a attorney in practice in Lansing. And so I also hope that there wouldn't be any kind of personal history with our current city attorney. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Are there further public comments this evening? Other than our wonderful county commissioner, any other public comments?
Ms. Brown? I'm not sure if Sonia Brown had comments. Your hand was up.
No, it wasn't, but thank you. I
Okay.
appreciate it.
You're welcome.
County Commissioner Tompkins.
Mr. Mayor, council members, all of you folks that are on this evening, good evening. Gary Tompkins, your county commissioner. It's nice to see all your faces and even through your voices, certainly with everything that's been going on the last few weeks. Just want to give you a few quick updates in terms of what's going on relative to the COVID-19 pandemic that's currently going on not only in Calhoun County, but in the state of Michigan. As most of you are aware, we have 41 confirmed cases in Calhoun County, with one death that actually has taken place, with 77 pending tests still out to be tested. As you well know, that we have over 17,000 confirmed cases in the state of Michigan with over 700 deaths. So a lot of things going on, certainly, as we expect that this week and the next week previous will be the following week will be some of the most difficult weeks we're having. So hopefully we're going to reach that apex. Real quickly, as a reminder from the CDC and also from Senator Bizon, who's been pushing this as well, is that everyone that goes out to have some kind of face covering as they go into public, just for their own safety. As many of you know, Calhoun County offices have been closed since March 17th, are scheduled to resume April 13th, pending the Governor Whitmer's decision in the coming week about whether that's going to be extended. As many of you know, she's recommending an extension. So with that being said, I would expect that the county would follow if she determines there was to be an extension. In my newsletter, as many of you know, on page 7 this month, I do include information that you still will be able to, how residents are able to interact with the county departments, even though everything is closed at this point in time. So still feel free to take a look at that. And if you do need to get in contact with a county office, they are still available for you. Regarding the county commission meeting on April 14th, we are going to have our regular scheduled meeting. It's our state mandated apportionment meeting, and that will be done via virtual meeting, very much the same in which you're doing this evening. So again, a lot of information, a lot of things going on, and each day that Emergency Operations Center meeting is being taken place in the county, as well as there is a joint information center meeting that takes place once a week in conjunction with the city of Battle Creek and Calhoun County. So there's a lot of information that's certainly going around, certainly with the COVID virus. And so again, stay tuned with all of that information going forward. And then finally, I'll just say again, it's a pleasure to see each and every one of you, those of you that are on the call this evening and those that are hooked up via phone. Certainly stay safe, stay home, and together we'll get through this and be even stronger coming out the other side. So again, with that being said, hopefully we'll get back to normal very soon, and I'll get to see each one of you physically. But until then, stay safe again, and it's a pleasure being with you this evening. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you.
City Manager's report, which each of us should have a copy of that.
You're on mute, Mr. McCleary.
Sorry about that. So I'll just mention very briefly, in the manager's report, I provided you with a copy of some background information on the emergency preparedness work that the city's doing. The status of the city staffing, which we've already discussed, as well as the issues with the city cell phones and the action that I took previously. I provided you with some information on non-essential employees as well as essential employees and the work tasks that are being performed. It'll give you a little bit of an idea that the work that is being done behind the scenes while we most of us shelter in place. Mayor, and I provided you with a list of some of the upcoming agenda items I've got on my list as we may deem appropriate to put them on. That's all I have, Your Honor.
Thank you. Okay, councilman comments. And
I have some.
everybody will start with precinct 1, Councilwoman Clark.
No.
Was that no?
Yes.
Okay. Councilwoman Reed from precinct 2.
I don't have any, thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Smith, precinct 3.
Yes. I had a constituent come to me this afternoon, told me that there was an MDOT truck on Irwin Avenue talking to the gentlemen who are working there today. When that conversation was done, all the heavy equipment was taken down to the parking area where they keep all that at the end of Irwin. They parked everything, locked it up, got in their trucks and went home. So we're wondering, is Irwin Avenue being put off for some reason? The only other thing I have is I do have people who are kind of upset and disgusted with the ever-changing agendas as we move forward. I mean, between Friday and Monday, an agenda will change 10, 12 times, and it's going to get out of hand. So we need to put some kind of a constraint on that, because it gets to the point where even council people, are looking. I won't even print out an agenda, until I get to the meeting, because anything I print out is going to be outdated, and we don't have a chance to see what's really going to be on the agenda, or to be able to research what's going to be on the agenda. So it would be nice if we could pick some kind of a place where we cut it off. I mean, I realize what the statutes say, but if there's some place we can cut it off to where we can all, know what's going to be on the agenda and be able to research so we know what we're talking about. I yield.
Okay. Councilwoman Lawler.
Okay, thank you. I just have a couple remarks. I just wanted to remind or make a suggestion for our city manager to please keep up with the ICMA and what they're telling us to do as far as put in these emergencies or how we're handling the COVID-19. I think him and I spoke about it. He said he was part of the ICMA. The next thing is if I could have your permission, city manager, to say something to our city clerk.
Sure.
Jill, I just want to let you know that I am forever grateful that I have been with this election poll, and you and other staff members, Mr. Loomis, the lady from over at the county building, helping me to be the best poll worker that I can be without any mistakes. But I just want to let you know that I am grateful for the opportunity. The next thing that I want to say that in the discussion about the elected official, council member Williamson called the question, but we did not vote on it. And I'm surprised that our city attorney did not catch that. So if we did not vote on it to call the question, I felt like I should have been able to ask my question. And not only that, Mayor, when I said thank you for not letting me, and I felt that it was rude, and I'm never rude to you. So could you please give me the same courtesy, please, sir? And I
First and
yield.
foremost, the question was not called. There was a motion by Councilmember Williamson to table it, which was seconded, and we voted on it. Okay, so if you found my response rude, I think it's quite in keeping with your comment of thank you for not letting me ask my question. You're welcome. So both ways.
Yeah.
Any other comments, Councilwoman Lawler?
No, thank you.
Okay, Councilman Williamson.
Turn off the mute button. I just want to remind everybody that the Albion Homer United Way, along with the mayor and several other leaders who mentioned in the earlier proclamations, are coordinating a pandemic coordinating task force to make sure that people are fed, babies have diapers, children have care, during this time of great uncertainty for so many people in our community. So, and currently there's a match by the Albion Community Foundation. You can make a contribution to this effort at the Albion Homer United Way website, albionhomeruw.org. The Albion Community Foundation is matching every donation up to $12,500. So we have the ability to raise over $25,000 to support these efforts in our community. So we're already supporting big things. One of the things that went out today is the bakery has started, when you make a special order at the bakery, you can actually buy additional meals for those in need, and they'll freeze them and send them directly to the food hub to distribute to people who need those meals. The United Way, along with this task force, has released funds to purchase additional food sorts to hand out to folks in need. I cannot stress how fast the need has been rising for not only our seniors, but our families who are missing their first paycheck or second paycheck since this pandemics and the stay-at-home orders have gone into place. And so if anyone's compelled, albionhomeruw.org, every gift matters. If you give $20, it's $40 because the Community Foundation's matching it. And I want to say thank you to every leader who has stepped up over the last couple of weeks to make sure that people are taken care of. There's nothing more important than taking care of our neighbor in our community, and making sure they make it through this. It's scary. It's definitely not fun, but we want to make sure everyone makes it through the best they can. So that was what I wanted to spend my comments on tonight. So again, thank you to everybody. I yield.
Thank you. So that's a perfect lead-in. I've got two things, one of which is here's my check that I'm donating my April salary to the Albion Homer United Way. Instead of the check, I'll go on the website because I know there is a match. And I would encourage all of my colleagues to do something similar to whatever extent you're able to. So that's my salary for the month, $275. That's going to the Albion Homer United Way. And great organizations, people have really stepped up. Only other thing I want to mention is that I received a letter today from the Arbor Day Foundation. And says the city manager you were supposed to get a copy, but I'll make sure you get a copy of this. On behalf of the Arbor Day Foundation, I write to congratulate Albion on earning recognition as a 2019 Tree City USA. So that's a nice accomplishment that we were able to get that reinstated. And Pat Tomasek had a lot to do with that, as did many other people on the tree committee in town. So with that, may I have
Mr. Mayor, I just wanted to offer a comment if I could.
Sure.
At a previous council meeting, Councilwoman Lawler had asked a question about what the status was of the collections for former manager Rufus. I just wanted to update the council that originally there was a debtor's exam that was scheduled in April. Given that the courts have minimized their operations because of COVID-19, that has been rescheduled by the court to May 1st. So barring further issues from the COVID-19, that'll be taking place on the 1st of May.
I have a request. If you could give County Prosecutor Dave Gilbert a call. He has some questions and some information that I think you might have that he would like to have regarding Ms. Rufus.
Sure.
Thank you. Councilman Smith, did you have a comment?
Yes, he just reminded me of something that a constituent asked me the other day. We're pursuing Ms. Rufus for $6,500, which was an agreement that she had made with the council so that she wouldn't prosecute the city. And she basically broke that agreement herself. So the question I'm being asked is, we know that the young lady embezzled $1,000 from the city. Why aren't we going for the full amount?
From the civil side, we don't need to. The civil side, we're just pursuing the contractual default. In terms of the money that was embezzled from the city, we can recoup our entire balance through restitution in the criminal case.
Thank you.
May I have a motion to adjourn?
You need to excuse Councilwoman Spicer.
Thank you very much. Okay. So all those in favor of excusing Councilwoman Spicer, say aye.
Wait, sorry, Mr. Mayor, you need a motion and a second.
Thank you.
Sorry.
So moved.
Support.
All those in favor, say aye.
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 Okay. Motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Support.
Support.
Aye.
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 Adjourn.
Aye.
Have a good night, everybody.
Thank you, Paul.